Hi, today I will talk about neoconservatism. What is neoconservatism? Neoconservatism is an ideological and political trend based on the idea of states non-interference in the economic sphere and business issues, which should be regulated by the mechanism of the free market. Initially, its representatives were American politicians who supported the use of US economic and military power to defeat hostile regimes and establish democracy in these countries. History. In the 1970s, an economic crisis began in the United States, which later spread to the entire capitalist world. Against the background of the failures that the state experienced in trying to regulate economic and social processes, the political elite of America began to reflect on the causes of the unstable situation and the possibilities of overcoming it. The result of these reflections was the emergence of a new political and economic ideology called neoconservatism. Neoconservatism has replaced neoliberalism, but the concept itself has a long and complex history of formation and development. Its meaning was formed and adjusted under the influence of the current agenda of public life. The very word neoconservatism has a long history. As early as the late 1880s, this concept was understood as a new trend of conservatism, as a political ideology. It's used relatively recently. Founders. The founders of neoconservatism were supporters of left-wing ideas and criticized Stalinism, which later took the form of militant anti-communism and rejection of any form of state control of public and economic life. In the 1970s, some American liberals changed their left-wing views on foreign policy issues, while remaining committed to left-wing political views in relation to the country's domestic policy. Neoconservative views in both domestic and foreign policy were held by such well-known political figures as Thatcher and Reagan. Neoconservatives also actively supported the foreign policy of George Bush, which was manifested in the war against terrorism and the sending of military forces to Afghanistan and Iraq. The main ideas of neoconservatism. The ideology of neoconservatism emerged from the old French conservatism. At the same time, the supporters of the new political trend didn't completely abandon their conservative views. The core of the ideology was a harmonious combination of liberal and market attitudes with traditional moral and ethical norms. During the formation and development of neoconservatism as a modern trend of political thought, the main ideas and signs that characterize its essence were formed. These include the preservation and protection of conservatism, moral and social values on a par with the modern principles of the post-industrial world, traditional institutions of the family and religion, the concepts of nation and culture coexist harmoniously with such provisions of liberalism as competition, the market, free enterprise, etc. Spiritually, culture and generally accepted moral norms were considered the basic factors necessary for the development of new technologies and the preservation of nature. This synthesized allowed neoconservatism to become widespread and popular in many Western countries. The founders of neoconservatism adhered to the liberal idea of interference of the state in the spheres of economic and social life. It was assumed that instead of relying on financial assistance from the state, people would learn to provide for themselves independently. Under this program, unemployment benefits were minimized and social campaigns aimed at providing for the poor were eliminated. Neo-conservatives spoke about the need to protect the rights and freedoms of the individual in public and political life. The institutions of local self-government and regional authorities were widely developed at this time. Causes of occurrence: in the context of an unstable economic and social situation, a part of the American political elite that adhered to left-wing views began to think about the need for a new idea that could combine key liberal positions with the traditional values. This idea was neoconservatism, which was influenced by the following factors. First one, it is crisis of the existing mechanism of the state regulation of the economy. Second one, rejection of the New Deal policy by the American New Left, which was anti-Semitic. Third one is the departure of liberals from traditional values, which led to an aggravation of the crisis phase. The relationship of neoconservatism to the state. Unlike traditional conservatism, neoconservatives didn't support the idea of a firm hand embodied in the activities of the state. On the contrary, with the framework of their concept, they sought to minimize the function of the state, primarily in the socio-economic sphere. The basis of relations between the state and citizens was the independence of the individual, who had to rely only on his own strength. At the same time, the duties of the state, as before, included the protection of the population and the guarantee of acceptable living conditions, security and stability. Freed from a number of functions, the state apparatus began to work more efficiently. The quality of its activities increased, and accordingly the political positions of the state strengthened. Attitude to private property. Neoconservatism today stands for the protection of private property, the free market, and the individual's personal freedom in society, but always subordinates them to the requirements of stability and continuity. Human rights are considered from the point of view of their natural and social justification. Thank you for your attention.